Chapter 1. Would you believe?
When Allah wants to frighten his slaves, the sun falls out of its chariot. This is a full eclipse, a misfortune for the sun.
An overview might be helpful before we begin. Islam started when Muhammad, a 7th century Arab, purported to be the messenger of God. That much we know for sure. The Quran, he claimed, was a series of revelations he received directly from a nameless Lord. The inspirational experience was described by Muhammad to be like a bell clanging in his head, causing him to shake and sweat profusely. These rather nasty experiences continued, he said, until he was able to decipher the message. Thus the Quran, Muslims believe, is God's revelation to man through his final and most important prophet. Yet only Muhammad heard these revelations. He offered no evidence of his divine inspiration. We take the Quran solely on his word. The Bible, by comparison, had 40 authors, all literate, who told a consistent story over the course of 15 centuries. Muhammad, who was admittedly illiterate, acted alone in the formation of Islam, and is alleged to have invented his religion over the course of 22 years. Over 1 billion people live in nations controlled by Islamic principles. Thus, to many, Muhammad was a rousing success. Yet these very same nations are among the world's most destitute, least free, and most violent. And they are the fountain of terror, providing the money, men, motive, and means for murder. In that light, Muhammad's legacy is considerably more tarnished. There were no miracles to prove Muhammad's claim of being a godly conduit. There are no healings, walking on water, parting seas, raising folks from the dead, or feeding multitudes. There are no fulfilled prophecies like the exacting and detailed predictions that biblical prophets routinely made to demonstrate their divine authority. But the most troubling part about our absolute reliance on Muhammad's testimony that his Quran was divinely inspired is that the prophet's character was deficient and his life was despicable as anyone who ever lived. That is not flattering, but it's the only conclusion that can be drawn from the original source material. According to the Quran and Sunnah, Muhammad founded Islam to rule over Arabs, Persians, and Byzantines, and through conquest, to steal their treasures. I will identify and quote thousands of verses from the Islamic scriptures to prove this, but for now, I want you to be an informed skeptic, one with a global view of Muhammad and his creation. This introductory summary will serve as a handrail in what is otherwise a topsy-turvy and disjointed realm. As we move through Muhammad's tortured Genesis accounts and convoluted recastings of biblical patriarchs, you will need this perspective to comprehend his motive and agenda. Over the course of these pages, you'll discover that the prophet's ministry in Mecca was filled with troubling episodes. Following his first Quranic revelation, Muhammad claimed to have been demon-possessed. By his own admission, he tried to commit suicide. Those who knew him best, his family and neighbors, said that he had gone mad. He is demon-possessed, a sorcerer, fabricating scripture, they said, accusing him of plagiarism and having purely selfish motives. They mocked his prophetic claims, ridiculed his Quran, and said that his preposterous notion of turning many idols into one God was insane. As a result of this verbal abuse, all chronicled in the Quran, Muhammad pledged to slaughter his kin. With the Quraysh bargain, the Meccans proved that Muhammad had established Islam to garner what he craved: power, sex, and money. The satanic verses which followed demonstrated that he was inspired by Halal bin Shakar, known in the West as Lucifer, the biblical Satan. Muhammad's hallucinogenic night's journey to the non-existent temple in Jerusalem confirmed that he could not be trusted. This flight of fancy was followed by the Pledge of Aqaba, where Islam turned political and then declared war on all mankind. 90 surahs were revealed during this period. They open with a score that mirror the style and content of Hanif poetry composed by Zayed, a contemporary of Muhammad. At this point, the prophet's revealing spirit was an unnamed Lord. When we're finally introduced, we learn that the Islamic God's name is Ar-Rahman. He is a dark and demented spirit, one who spends his days in hell. He deceives men, leads them astray, shackles them, dragging them to their doom. Ar-Rahman personally participates in hell's torments, turning men on a spit, tearing them apart, forcing them to eat thorns, pitch, and boiling water. His paradise is a brothel. Its rivers flow with wine, and multiple virgins satiate the carnal desires of the faithful. As you might imagine, Muhammad's contemporaries, the Quraysh tribe in the little burg of Mecca, thought he was nuts. The Quran contains over 400 iterations of the never-ending argument between Muhammad and his tribe. Those who knew this prophet best called him a charlatan. They charged him with the very offenses the Quran and Hadith confirm he was guilty of perpetrating. Then, demonstrating the maturity and discipline of a schoolyard bully, the Islamic God struck back. He slandered the Meccans with an exhaustive list of hateful slurs and threatened them with a painful doom. When I first read the Quran, I was surprised to find the endless regurgitation of spiteful attacks. The Meccans shouted, "Muhammad, you are an insane, demon-possessed sorcerer, forging the Quran." Allah answered, "My messenger is not insane, nor is he demon-possessed." I find this perplexing. Why didn't some enterprising scribe edit these incriminating charges out before codifying the Quran? Then I realized that without the raging feud, there was no justification for the Scripture's single most repetitive rant. If you reject Muhammad, Muslims will kill you so that his God can roast you alive. I recognize that this is the antithesis of what you expected to see during the formative years of a great religion. Yet the evidence, the only evidence, is irrefutable. The Quran takes us into a demented and violent realm. It is a bad job of plagiarizing held together by a childish rant. Paradise and hell are both decadent and disgusting, more satanic than divine, and the Sunnah, which professes to be inspired scripture, is no better. Stroke by stroke, they present an ugly picture of an abused child who became an abuser. Having destroyed the religion of Islam in Mecca, Muhammad created the political doctrine of submission in Medina. He became a pirate, dictator, and terrorist leader. He used Quranic scripture to justify horrific behavior: pedophilia, incest, rape, torture, assassinations, thievery, mass murder, and terror, all in an unbridled orgy of sex, power, and money. Again, this summation simply reflects the portrayal documented in the Islamic Sunnah and confirmed in the Quran. When he was 50, Muhammad married a 6-year-old child. Then he stole his son's wife. After forcing young girls to watch his men execute their fathers, Muhammad raped them. He tortured his victims to make sure no booty escaped his grasp. He committed mass murder, slaughtering Jews in genocidal rage. In 10 years, he ordered a score of assassinations and conducted 75 terrorist raids. He used the sword to force Arabs into submission and used the slave trade to finance Islam. He was more interested in collecting girls and taxes than anything else. He ruled through fear, and his God condoned it all. This harsh portrayal does not represent my interpretation of the most negative Islamic scriptures, or even a view derived from a jaundiced document crafted by an enemy of the religion.